This is Indiana in the Morning, presented by First Commonwealth Bank here on the Voice of Indiana County, WCCS, AM 101.1 FM, AM 1160, and our interviews at this time brought to you by Marcus & Mack, a law firm representing injured people. We're joined on the line right now by Indiana County Commissioner Sherene Hess. Sherene, good morning. How are you doing?
Good morning, Josh. I'm doing great.
Excellent. Good to hear. Now, not only are you an Indiana County Commissioner, but you also wear a lot of caps and represent Indiana County to the County Commissioners Association of Pennsylvania. I've been calling it CCAP most of the morning. But one of the areas that you're focusing on and you wanted to talk about this morning was the Election Reform Commission.
Yes, that's right, Josh. And I am the chair of the Elections Reform Committee for the County Commissioners Association. And you got it. We call it CCAP. And one of our top priorities at the association this year, in fact, the top priority was elections reform, and in particular two matters related to the new voting law, and that was to extend pre-canvassing, to expand pre-canvassing of the mail-in votes, and I can talk a little bit about that later, but also to look at how we the mail-in ballot application deadline and what a time crunch it presented to the elections offices. And those were a couple of things that we really were pushing for. Now, we didn't get that this year, but we're still going to work with the legislature and with the administration on those two reforms, and also just on working on anything related to the election code. We are really welcoming an invitation really from the legislature to work with them, because as you know, it's at the county level where all elections are done. Mm-hmm. And so we know what works, we know what doesn't work, we know it costs a lot of money and what's cost effective. So we really, really welcome that invitation to work with them. Otherwise it can be a really chaotic time.
Yeah, as we've seen the chaos kind of happen in the last couple of election cycles with the changes in the voter laws, which allow now for more ballots to be done through mail-in balloting, and we'll tackle that issue first. So the mail-in ballot application deadline has been the main topic of discussion through your committee with CCAP, and the problem is I'm guessing it sounds like it's not enough time for people to get those applications in.
Yeah, the issue is right now it's 7 days. The deadline to apply for your mail 7 days before the election. And while we know that gives voters the most time to decide what they're going to do for Election Day, and it really is a way to expand the vote in a way, it also presents a huge time crunch. We know that when you have only 7 days for the county to receive that application, to process it, to get it back in the mail to the voter, and then for the voter to get their ballot back to the county in just 7 days is just nearly impossible. And it ends up causing a lot of fear that, it's not going to get there in time, so the voter ends up going to the poll on Election Day, and then there's a process of needing to spoil that ballot and get a regular ballot, and it's a lot of confusion. So we believe that moving that application deadline back to 15 days before the election really was the best opportunity to enfranchise voters and to assure that the mail-in ballot process would work smoothly as it was intended to do. So we didn't get that, unfortunately, with the latest thing to do election reform. But so the deadline is still 7 days before the election. And the other thing was we were really hoping for more time to do pre-canvassing of the mail-in ballots.
Yeah, that was... Go ahead. I was going to say, because that was something that's been a problem with a lot of counties, from what I understand.
Absolutely. And it didn't mean that anything was done inaccurately. It just took more time to get the results. And I mean, we all want the results on election night. And as we saw in 2020, in a lot of states, and in Pennsylvania for the first time, we were unable to have those election results that night, or early the next morning. I mean, there's lots of times when you had presidential elections and it was just a very heavy turnout. Mm-hmm. And part of that was we took time to make sure every single vote was counted correctly and every process was followed as best as the guidance was permitting for us to do that. And it still took Pennsylvania several days to get those results in for the 2020 election. It worked. I mean, the mail-in ballots situation and those. I mean, those were historic reforms in 2019 to do mail-in balloting and and extend the voter registration deadline up to 15 days before an election, and those kinds of things. Those were some really historic reforms and much needed. But they did present some logistical issues, not accuracy issues. I mean, there's no question that the 67 counties and elections offices do not question their results. We did audit after audit after audit, and all of them were clean. So we know we need more time, and that's what we're going to really work hard for.
We've actually, when you were saying that the accuracy is not the issue, because we have been hearing a lot of the reports about 3 counties in Pennsylvania being asked to submit their election materials to be perused by an independent party for a purpose of, I guess, some sort of recount in certain ways. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about it. It's an election audit. It's being put forth by the Republicans, Senate Republicans, and their assertion is that there was some kind of fraudulent activity. The County Commissioners Association has not been involved in that audit in any way, and I don't, to be honest, I don't know a lot about it, but I know that if those 3 counties do open up their election equipment to a third party, they really run the risk of, they will run the risk of having to replace that equipment or have it decertified by the state. And then you're looking at tons of money to get those machines either replaced or, recalibrated or whatever needs to happen. And in fact, Franklin County, I believe, does have an issue where they did go through a third party audit operation, and they did end up being having to pay it back a pretty large bill to have their machines redone. So there's really some risks with that. I don't know if any of those 3 counties have followed through, complied with that request in any way, but it's an ongoing matter.
Yeah, we're probably going to see that story continue to grow as the days go on here in this election. So as far as elections for Indiana County went this year, aside from the 2 issues that you mentioned, expanding pre-canvassing and the changing of the mail-in ballot application deadline, it sounded like for Indiana County, elections went pretty well, at least in this past primary election.
Yes, they did, and even in 2020, it was a large operation dealing with, the new, mail-in balloting for a presidential general election, but we did it, and there are many checks and balances in this process. Many eyes are on this multi-day event. And also the months leading up to it, we have excellent training programs for our poll workers and the volunteers. We have, judges of elections and inspectors and all sorts of folks. Our solicitor gets involved. The election board of elections is heavily involved, and both parties have their folks involved in too. Just watching, listening. They're able to be in when the counting is happening. They have to. There's certain rules they have to follow, but the system really got a little bent. It really did. We felt some real pressure, and in fact, across the state, a lot of election directors ended up really deciding to move on from that position, either through retirement, but a lot of times just because it was just there was so much pressure on that position that they felt that was what they needed to do. So we don't want that. We have a lot of knowledge in that institution of elections offices. We need to take care of those folks. A lot of times these are volunteers too, poll workers working 12, 15, 16-hour days, and they're doing this out of their civic duty. So we need to make sure that we've got a process that is working for them and for the counties too.
You mentioned taking care of the people who work in the Elections Bureau. We actually have I've been following out of Westmoreland County some stories about how their Elections Bureau director was recently released from her job, and they've gone on to hire someone new based out of what happened during the elections in 2020 and 2021 in Westmoreland County. I'm glad to hear, though, that Indiana County still has things ran relatively smooth. and things are continuing to be good. But as you said, it's an all hands to the pump situation when it comes to the county elections, especially in a county like Indiana.
It is, and that's why we really hope that the legislature and the administration will work with the counties when if they make changes. My whole reason for wanting to come on the show is because I saw the poll on the radio station's website about the election code, and I thought, well, maybe it's a good time to talk about elections. But we really need them to listen, because it's our most precious right for people to vote, and we are extremely, as a county commissioner, it's maybe the one thing we take the most seriously, is making sure our elections are run fairly, accurately, and securely. And we know that to do that, we need to have the sufficient resources to cover those operational needs, and to make sure we have the equipment in proper working order, and to make sure we have the right training. So we really are just so hopeful that the legislature and the administration will work with us, and not just hand down in a reformed election code that is really just presents a lot of problems that nobody anticipated, and that's what could happen, and that's why the House Bill 1300 was it just didn't quite get off the ground. There was just so much in it that we knew that voter ID was an issue with that, but we were hoping that we could get a clean bill with those two issues we talked about earlier, and at least have that for the November election. It doesn't look like we're going to get that, so we're going to have to just regroup and do what we always do at counties. We get it done, because that is our number one job at the county level, is to get those elections administered.
Sherene, we're just up to the mark. Thank you very much for joining us today here on Indiana in the Morning. And I'll probably see or hear you over at the County Commissioners meeting later today.
Yep, 10:30 Commissioners meeting. And if anyone has any questions about voting, please call the county. Don't go to the internet for the information. Call us directly. We'll be happy to help you.
Excellent. Thanks again, Sherene.
Thank you. Take care.
You too. Sherene Hess joining us on Indiana in the Morning, presented by First Commonwealth Bank, and our interviews presented by Marcus & Mack, a law firm representing injured people.